Welcome to Ethos of Humanity. My name is Catania. This is episode 21, and I am joined with Colinda. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I remember we had met maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, and I remember us having a really in-depth conversation, and I was just very inspired by your life, your perspective, and the work that you do. And so if you feel comfortable, we should just start at the beginning and just dive right into the story of your life.
Sure. And as you mentioned that, and I reflect back, I think that was actually for International Women's Day. Thank you for having me then. I enjoyed my time with you and your mother that day. I could have visited for hours. And the conversations were amazing afterwards. But I think since then, even though it's only been 2 or 3 years, I've learned and grown so much more and have been through so much. So, yeah, see what comes up and comes out.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning.
The beginning. In which way?
Yeah, like where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Yellowknife, actually, Northwest Territories. Um, I identify myself as an Albertan, though. I was raised in Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. That's my home community. That's where my family's roots lie. I never ever thought I would become a northerner or return to the Northwest Territories, but I actually did. It's been about 25 years now total. I've been back in Alberta the past 4 years. I've been a little bit here, there, and everywhere, I suppose, but I spent the majority of my childhood, my teen, and my early adult years in Fort Chipewyan, as well as in Fort McMurray. And then, yeah, moving north, I raised my family there. I left Alberta with two young sons, and I had four more while I was in the north. So I now have six children. Four of them are all above the age of 18 now, but I've got two young ones. I don't think you've met them before, but I know you're aware of them. And those are my two little guys that both live with Down syndrome. They've had a huge effect on my life, my growth, my new wisdom. I'm amazed at times that I'm not all gray yet. It's been an interesting life overall, but yeah, that's where it all started, was in Yellowknife and then to Fort Chipewyan, and here we are sitting here today, and I'm in Edmonton for just a short amount of time now.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and so what sort of community did you grow up in?
What sort of community? Oh boy. When I think back and reflect back then, the way life looked from that perspective as a child, a teenager, young adult compared to today, I was surrounded by a lot of things that to me I saw back then as normal because it's just the way things were in majority of the community and households that I saw. There was a lot of alcohol. I was surrounded by parties and adult drinking from a very young age, as early as I can remember. And my mother quit drinking when I was 7, so thankfully it didn't last for a long span of time. But by that time, I had already been exposed to a lot of things, the alcohol, the parties, various types of abuse, physical and otherwise. A lot of things my mom didn't even know were happening. My earliest memory, I think, was maybe 3, where things started to happen to me. And of course, the whole you can't tell anybody or I'll hurt your mom if you say anything, all of that came into play. My teenage years still, even though my mother had quit drinking, and she still brings it up at times. She just mentioned it last week, actually. She went to an AA meeting herself. She was in Fort McMurray. She lives in Fort Chipewyan. And she said in one of those buildings that she attended, she used to go to when I was a child, when she first quit drinking. And she said, I thought of you. I could see you as a child being there with me in the meetings, you running around, being, having fun with the other kids. 'Cause we all used to be brought to meetings with our parents at times back then. And she said, and I still wonder, even though you've been sober for 10 years, how come you didn't learn a darn thing? You went to meetings for years. Well, as a child, I'm not worried about what you guys are saying or the stories being shared. I'm worried about where can I find the fun? What other kids are here? But yeah, that went on throughout my teenage years. And as I've mentioned to you before in conversation, I was also raised by a codependent mother. So I became, oh my gosh, full blown, completely codependent. I had not so good relationships, a lot of abuse throughout many of my relationships. Had my first child just shortly after I turned 18. But still, from that young age up until then, there was still a lot of partying going on. I think I started partying myself when I was 13, running away from home. There was abuse in the home as well, physically. So I used to run from that as well. I do have permission from my mother to share parts of her story. I've shared our experiences many times throughout the last few years, and she gives me full permission, just so you're aware. But who my mother was back then as a parent, she went through a lot herself. She's got quite the story, which she eventually shared with me. I used to resent my mother frequently, and for many years, I've even cut her out of my life at times because I blamed her for a lot of things that happened to me. Why wasn't she there? Why didn't she protect me? Why did she expose me to? It was all her fault because I was told by her sisters, her siblings, that I was born messed up and I always would be. I know different now thanks to years of training and learning and growing, doing my own healing work. I know that what was taking place around me was what wired me for the type of life I lived back then. So yeah, there was a lot of up and downs, a lot of huge hard lessons throughout the years. There were times, I believe it was actually, I'm going to say it anyway. Usually I'm like, don't mention your age because I don't feel it yet. But I'm 48 now. And I think that up until my early to mid the majority of the time, I used to just wish the earth would open up and swallow me whole.
Mhm.
Because all I ever felt was struggle, pain. People were difficult with me. Mm. To this day, considered the black sheep of my family, my mother's siblings and extended family. I used to hate it. I used to try so hard to be a part. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God. And I understand why I'm in that space. I pushed back where many others didn't from a very young age. I stood up, I spoke out, I protected my mother and my own siblings from negative, toxic behaviors and words and actions, and they weren't used to that. So they started to push me aside. Now I'm at a point where it's thank God, because I think if I had continued to stay in that dynamic, I would have continued to stay small.
Mhm.
Wasn't just them, there were others in my life who always tried to keep me small. I used to keep achievements and my own traits and qualities, talents hidden because I was always told people like us, Indigenous people, we're not supposed to do that. We don't belong there. Whereas at school, I was excelling in huge ways. I skipped 2 grades in junior high and student leadership, gifted class, honor roll, you name it, I was a part of it. I wanted to be a doctor, and that particular school in Fort McMurray was doing what they could to help move me toward that. I did some modeling when I was young as well in Fort McMurray, but that was something else I didn't like others to know about because I used to have comments made to me like, I don't hear it much anymore, but one of the comments used to be in the Indigenous communities, you think you're too good for us? So if I did something well, those are things I would hear. And already I grew up feeling small majority of my life. So if those kind of comments were made, I'd step back hugely. I want to fit in. I want to be accepted. Now, well, you've seen some of the things I've done, and overall, I'm not small anymore. I've learned to connect with who I truly am, who I was at one point and forgot. And I also have young ones watching me, my 6 sons, and I've told them many times, you can have me do anything you want to in this world. So I have to accept, or sorry, I have to set that example for them also. Yeah, it's been interesting, but I can go on, and I'm sure that there's other things you might want to explore.
No, that's wonderful. I love it. Yeah, and it's so interesting to hear how, no matter what walk of life, we're faced with challenges and we have opportunities to grow and excel, but we do feel very pulled to our community. And sometimes the circles that we walk in can only take us so far. And we
Yes.
realize that we're in the wrong room.
Oh, yes, definitely. That's been
Mhm.
my experience a number of times throughout the years. So even still at my age now, at times I wonder, okay, which direction am I supposed to be taking? What's going on here? I tried
Mhm.
this. It doesn't seem that that's where me and my kids, are supposed to be. And I used to be one of those people where I used to get signs. We've even had visions and such. I never used to really share openly about it, starting to become more comfortable with saying it the last few years and being open about it. But I would watch for signs. I would wait for my visions. I'd put my questions out there, and I usually used to get my answers, and I would follow that.
Mhm.
And there was a point in time, though, where I felt God, creator, universe, ancestors, they weren't there anymore. They had abandoned me. So I kind of started to abandon them as well. Okay, you're not there anymore. You're not leading and guiding me. I've always followed through what you've shown me. So I don't know what's going on, but I guess I'm on my own and I have no choice but to figure this life and this world out. I used to get upset though. I used to have resentment for the powers that be. Because my thing was also, you gave me not one, but two little boys with Down syndrome, and I am their primary caregiver. I'm a single parent, and life is nothing but a struggle. But my belief is also that before we come here, we choose our parents. We choose those that we will walk through life with. And I've even told my youngest son, I have one already when he was a baby. I have one already, one special little boy. What made you think that you had to come to me as well, that I could do it? I love you like crazy. You're my world. But do you know how hard this is? And so I used to put it out there too, like, where are you? You sent me two special little boys. Their fathers are not always around. So you're their father. Help me. I need help and support. These boys are my world. So can you at least smooth the path a little bit? But no, that hasn't been our experience overall. Sometimes I noticed just get to that point where, okay, things are too heavy. I don't know how much more I can carry. And it's not just me and my two youngest sons. There's many things that I juggle in life and trying to be there for my mother, for my adult children, juggling other things as well in life. And sometimes things just get so heavy and I just had enough. And then all of a sudden, what I'm needing in life, whatever type of help or support, when I give up, that's when it's there. Why do you wait until we get to that point? It's like manifestation. When you completely let go of the shore and you just flow with that river,
Yeah.
everything works out.
It's so funny you say that because I've had that experience last year, and I very much in the same mindset of kind of like trusting the universe and kind of curious as to what sort of divine force is influencing us. And it was the year of the snake, and I felt a lot of dismantling, shedding, getting rid of access to make room for the new. But in
Mhm.
lieu of that, I felt like I was a boulder, or not even a boulder, a light object in a river while there's a current trying to push me. And I'm almost being stubborn, almost like refusing to flow.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that. And I love that analogy of, sometimes when you feel like, you've got only so much hope left,
Yeah.
that's when, opportunity or, you know, I guess, yeah, that it starts to kind of funnel in. The
Yes.
the energy starts to shift.
And I've got a little bit of a neat story even around that, a little short one. Getting to that place again where I think it was maybe 3, 4 years ago. I'm not sure if I had met you yet, so I may have shared it before. And I was in that place again, going through a lot of difficulties and struggles. I came to Edmonton originally for medical purposes for my two children during COVID, because they always had to isolate when we returned to the north for 2 weeks in a hotel. Got to a point they were melting down, and I was starting to melt down with them. It was just too much. And so we were moved to Edmonton, and I had no income at the time. I had to take a 1 year leave without pay. So I was depending on beading skills, which I used to be able to get a lot of sales back then because not a lot of people beaded back then. Everybody beads today. So yeah, it's rare that I touch beads anymore for that purpose. But I got to a place where just nothing was coming in. I was so worried and stuck. How am I going to pay rent, my vehicle, my utilities? We need a vehicle. I have these two special needs boys. I can't be without one. I have to make payments and just nothing was happening. And we were also stuck in our home for about 3 months straight. We were still in lockdown. My home started to feel like a jail. I noticed I'm starting to become depressed. I found out a reason behind what was going on. I was actually triggered. And I live with CPTSD, so I was triggered to a moment from my childhood, I later learned. But through that situation, I've had a heart flutter all my life. But I noticed it used to happen maybe a couple of times a week all my life, but now it was happening daily. many times throughout the day. So to me, that was my body telling me something's completely off. You're not in a good space. I couldn't do much about it. So I chose to return to the north because my thought was, if anything happens to me with these two little boys, nobody's going to know for days because nobody checks in on us.
Mhm.
Everybody's on lockdown. So I returned to the north, barely had enough to get there, but I got there. I'm sitting outside in the back deck one evening. I'm in tears. Tears are just falling. I'm so stuck. I gave up. And I was at one of those points where it was, if this is all life is supposed to be for me, I can't do it anymore. My whole life was a struggle. I thought I changed that. I worked so hard, still nothing but hardship. And looking up at the sky, and again, my belief in my spirituality and God, creator of the universe, I was looking up and I was saying not so good things. And basically, I've always followed through in everything that you've guided me towards for the betterment of my kids. I did this now. I went south. And this is the situation you gave me. I'm done with you. And I was feeling a lot of anger, heaviness, resentment, sadness, the depression. I went back inside and I was just sitting. Suddenly, my phone rang and number I didn't recognize. I believe it was an Ontario number. Normally, I wouldn't answer that. I answered it, and she asked, "Is this Colinda?" And me being in my mood, I was kind of like, "Yeah, why? Who is this?" And she said, "It's Cindy Blackstock. I've heard your story, and I'd like to help you." I started shaking. I had tears falling. It's been my wish to talk to her and share what this life is like as a single special needs parent for years. And I've always watched her work. And I used to think she'd never ever talk to me or listen to me anyway. And here she was calling me because a lady who had mentored me when I trained with Gabor Mate knew her personally. And she shared about me and my boys. And she moved mountains within an hour or two that I could not move for years. I couldn't even budge them. And all of a sudden we had respite care and such. So I was back outside there after this phone call looking up, and I'm sorry, you really knocked me on my butt this time. But that's
Mhm.
what I mean, though. It's like when we completely just let go, get to that point of, I'm done. I don't even care anymore. Boom, it's there.
Yeah. And do you ever feel like, when you have the weight of the world and you feel like what is the meaning of all of this and you have the ability to share it not in a way of pity but empowerment and resilience and the fact that you've endured so much. It makes the weight lighter and makes you feel like the journey wasn't for nothing and to feel that you can relate to someone that understands the depths of your experience, it probably is extremely empowering.
Oh, yes. And I've seen the impacts of my sharing my own personal journey and story with others through workshops and group sessions and such that I've done in different communities. And even sharing my own childhood experiences through trauma, the effects of how I came through and overcame a lot of that. The way a child in fight, flight, survival mode may think and feel even because I've worked with foster care and kinship parents as well through child and family services with some nations. And the things they've told me afterwards, oftentimes I'll have people come and speak to me one on one personally and share with me. And they've told me how powerful my stories were. And these are my true life experiences that I speak from to help them see from the perspective of one who has actually lived it for a number of years, felt
Mhm.
it, had to navigate through many of those situations, even as a child, figuring things out to keep yourself safe and such, and what's going on and why. So to me, that's the reward when I connected with and resonated with someone in a huge way, even if it's just one person in a room of even 20. If
Mhm.
it resonated with one and they come and they share what they picked up, what they heard, what they learned, I know I had an effect in some way, and that one person is going to go and share it as well. I used
Mhm.
to have a lot of difficulty speaking up and sharing my own truth and my own stories, but seeing the impacts and how it can start to trigger those positive, healthy changes going forward, I'm always open to it.
Me too. It's been a journey of, I guess the analogy that I like to look at is like just wearing your scars. And as I mentioned before too, I mean, if we were given a roadmap to life on how to get from, A to Z and, it were that easy, who would follow that? We don't go through life unscathed and
Yes.
experiences really bring out our fullest potential when it comes to growth, to see what we're capable of. I think it's when we're in isolation, that's when it can get really heavy because we start to think that we're all by ourselves treading water in this big ocean.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I've been in that place at times. And again, mentioning Gabor Mate, I recently took part in one of his online events for a full week. And I was so happy because I tried to tell myself this many times. I always forget and I've shared with others. But when we're going through our own difficult situations, it doesn't matter what we know or how much training we may have in those helping fields and mental health wellness fields. People will ask us, and I've been asked at times too, you know this stuff, you help people through this. So how come you're having difficulty helping yourself? Well, it doesn't matter what we know. When we are going through something difficult, heavy, and hard, and we're carrying it quite heavy, everything we know in that sense, it goes out the window. We're so focused on the situation and experience at hand, and how am I going to get through this? We're so are so focused on what we're feeling in that moment, and sometimes it's hard to come out of. So that's where, for me, at times it helps to connect with someone I hugely trust who also knows this kind of work, because they will remind me when I've forgotten my own tools. They'll remind me, or they'll ask, you've done this for yourself, or you like to engage in this practice. So what have you done? And then it's, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I didn't
Hmm.
even try that yet. I didn't even think of it because I was stuck on how am I going to take care of or fix this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not diagnosed, but I do feel like I have a level of complex PTSD myself. And it's very interesting too, as we peel back the layers, right? And I've listened to many interviews, and it's very empowering to understand how sometimes when we share our stories, it almost opens up a box. And sometimes it's a lot, to unpack. And so just to work with that with someone that can help, guide you through the process and everything like that. I'd imagine it's very empowering work to have that as someone that's like modeling that for you and then vice versa.
Definitely. And also having a diagnosis. Well, the lady that I worked with as a mentor under Gabor's training program, he connected me with her. He introduced us to each other. He asked her to take me under her wing as she's an Indigenous psychotherapist. And she had been through many of the things throughout her life that I had been. I was going to drop out, and that's when he connected and introduced me to her so that I would continue on with the program, not understanding as an Indigenous person, woman, why I wanted to leave the program, why I felt I didn't belong. And I think that's one of the hugest gifts that could have played out in my life was him making that connection with her for me, because it was her who shared with me, based on some of the work we had done together, that I lived with CPTSD. Until
Mhm.
then, I had heard it and understood it, of course, but I didn't identify myself as I didn't fully see it as in me. I understood that, yeah, 99.9%, I am definitely one of those people with PTSD, but ooh, add the C in there, and now knowing all of that and what that entails and what that means. Sorry, my cat is under me here. But,
No.
she also taught me how to work with it, how to understand my own brain, my own nervous system, and why I could get stuck in states of being triggered and back to fight, flight, freeze mode. But that was my life for more than 30 years of my life, was living in a state of survival, and how
Mhm.
easy it was to fall back and why. And gaining that diagnosis and the understanding of everything and why my life played out as it did was a huge game changer for me in so many ways.
I
It's
can
pretty
imagine.
rare I fall into and get stuck in a trigger anymore, because I can stop and do my self inventory, explore what's happening for me in the moment, and do the work that I need to take care of myself and keep myself in a good space.
Incredible. And is that much of the training that you work with? Because for anyone that isn't aware, Gabor Mate, he's a physician, a Canadian physician. His story is remarkable. He was originally from Hungary, survived the Holocaust, had come to Canada, and he particularly focused a lot of his work, with actually, mothers and pregnancy. He was a general practitioner, but he also worked on East Hastings. So he has a wide array of education when it comes to generational trauma, the nervous system, even somatic work. And one thing that I've heard about his program that's quite remarkable, and I'd love to hear more about what your experience was, in order to get, this formal education through him, there's a lot of self work that is required of you to complete
Yes.
this education.
Yes. And even before you step into that, you have to have certain qualifications. And I was surprised. I didn't think I would have them all. But being a trained and certified life coach as well, under Tony Robbins, I chased big names. The ones I saw doing the actual work, renowned as experts. I was trained by Tony Robbins as a life coach, and having my background in the correction service as an Indigenous person working directly and one on one with those populations, that was a part of how I got into that. But yes, the self work was, I thought I had done a lot of work before entering into Gabor's program. And there are a couple of different ones. I took the full blown, extensive, in depth, year long. On my certificate, it says 240 hours, but I swear it was double or triple that when you step into the practicum and the work that comes into play outside of the actual training itself. Right off the first week, I was triggered in huge ways. Things were coming up for me, and I didn't fully understand how triggering it would all be, or even I didn't catch that what I was falling into was my own stuff was coming up. I knew, but it hit so heavy at times. There's a reason that they recommend that you are seeing continuous counseling or therapy or supports in some way. And you have to, I forgot how I showed them or proved it, but I was seeing somebody overall regularly, but you have to be just in case things come up to the extreme. Many things from my childhood came up. I think in every single module shared, there was something. But that's also where I learned some of the strengths that I have now, like being able to sit and hear some of the horrific stories that are forward to me, seeing situations that I have to deal with at times in the work that I do, seeing children in difficult situations. And it's not always looking at the situation itself either. It's what's going on here as a whole, the whole environment. And one of the things that I've shared in spaces I've worked in, or even in workshops that I've done, is something I learned with Tony Robbins that stuck out for me. Was it's not the individual themselves. You have to expand the unit. And expanding the unit is, especially when I had to work in situations where children were involved. We can't just look at that child themselves. If you're removing a child from the home, you have to look at all the other individuals that surround them on a daily basis, siblings that are being affected by a situation, the parents. And I'm someone that was affected by child and family services as a child. And even in my adult life, I had one of my children, my second son, was taken from me wrongfully. They went for a temporary guardianship order as well. I had to go to court. And I feel I got lucky back then because the judge that we had, he actually gave me space to speak. He asked me to speak. He wanted my side of the story. And after I shared my side of the story, he hit the table. He hit the table. He got upset at the social workers. And where's this woman's baby? You go and get him right now and give him back. You do this, you do that. And he made sure we were taken care of. So I lucked out there. But that's not always the situation for most, especially for Indigenous families. For a number of years, and you're probably aware, there are different court cases and such that are going forward, settlements and claims and so on, because this is what happened to many of us, but nobody ever looked at that. It was, we got a report, so we just have to act on that. I can understand that. Yes, you got to ensure safety, but it was always about this individual in the moment. And then the mother that's affected, just let them be. But how much is that mother going through when you've torn her baby away from her arms? How much is that sibling, that grandparent, those aunt and uncles that are in our Indigenous communities, especially, we're usually quite heavily involved when it comes to the family. Everybody always played a part for a number of years. And so to me, that's expanding the unit is, I'm just using that situation as an example. But even for myself as an adult, I'm going through something. I'm receiving the help and the care in the moment. This was quite difficult and heavy. But what about my two little boys? How were they affected even by the energy in the home? What they saw from me, myself, if I had fallen apart. And so that's one thing I like to look at often, even when I'm dealing with somebody one on one. if I'm noticing something in them, we're doing what we can to help and support and care for this person, but we have to consider those that were involved as well in some way because they've been impacted one way or another, even if they're not expressing it, speaking about it, showing it. So giving and paying attention to situations like that as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, I could go on for hours about the
Mhm.
training that it was just so amazing. And I've thought at times maybe I need to step into that again. I have access to the full program for life. I could do that, but part of me wants to step back into it fully due to the connections I made, the one-on-one work that I got to do with individuals from all over the world. That was the other thing that was hard. I had to take time off work at times to be able to make sessions because we also have to practice as the client and as the person in the supporting role. And the people that we worked with were from all over the world. So I sometimes had to be up at 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning to connect with someone who's on the other side of the country. But otherwise, I think that's one of the most amazing things that I've done for myself. We've also been told that I'm probably going to say the wrong word. I want to say comparative, but maybe it's equal to university degrees.
Mhm.
We trained with a variety of mental health professionals that have their PhD. They've been to college, university, you name it. And they had mentioned throughout the programming, many of them, that a lot of what we touched on, they didn't even touch on a quarter of it in these school settings. So I'm quite
Mhm.
happy about that. I wish I had letters behind my name that say she took his training. And so it's more in depth.
Yeah.
Something I carry quietly, I guess, is the pride in that, knowing that that's how extensive it was and I got to be a part of and to learn and now carry those teachings and knowledge as well.
It's very interesting you say that because I hear that too. Any sort of formal education, post-secondary education, it's becoming highly saturated, and most people that end up leaving, it's not applied work based on what the current field is and like kind of how each industry works. Oftentimes, people have to kind of build off of it as opposed to
Yep.
being like fully integrated going into the work field. And so it's amazing, and it doesn't surprise me that Gabor Mate, a lot of his work is very innovative and it's very modern and it's very applied to what our current situation is because a lot of these systems they're kind of falling apart right now and kind of crumbling, and so we need a new innovative way to help people. And so that's amazing that you jumped right in. It didn't just help you on a personal level, but it's so hands on and integrative that you're able to help people all around the world with. And much of what his work is, for anyone that's read any of his work, his recent book, The Myth of Normal, I just thought it was so profound and it's so true. What is our baseline for normal? We're all impacted by what I like to call an unhealthy ecosystem. We don't operate how we did hundreds of years ago. And we're all struggling. And to kind of put people in categories, we're all just trying to tread water, trying to understand where we came from, what we've experienced. And so it's amazing that, you feel the impacts of the work that you're doing, even though it was very hands on for such a time.
Oh, most definitely. And it changed my life in those ways. I went towards that because I wanted to work with trauma therapy. One on one was more what I got involved for. But I never ever would have expected that it would turn into facilitation as well. And I share majority of Gabor's work. With his full permission, I've been confronted and asked, who gives you the authority to share this work? So I reached out to him and I said, this came up and I didn't even think about that. So what do I say when they ask such things? And he said, well, it's yours. You worked hard for that. You gained it. You earned it. It's not just mine. It's yours too now. And you paid for it. So you can do whatever you want with that. And I said, can you give me proof of that though? So he wrote a letter for me and he signed it saying that I can utilize it in whatever way I see fit, wherever, in good ways, of course. Can't remember exactly how he worded it. It was plain simple to the point, but I'm glad that he did that. People that knew I had that training that I had taken part asked me, well, why don't you share this? start doing facilitation work. If you told me 10 years ago I would stand in conference rooms and share the works of Dr. Gabor Mate, who that's my celebrity. I don't care about all these big Hollywood names. I love and adore his work. It's changed and shaped my life in huge ways. If you told me that 10 years ago, you'll be doing this, I'd laugh. I would have laughed so hard and asked you if you're insane. But yet here I was doing exactly that. And with an Indigenous perspective, being an Indigenous person and having had those firsthand experiences and living through a lot of what our people on Indigenous lands and reserves and nations and such deal with still oftentimes being able to understand and to have lived those firsthand and having those perspectives on a variety of levels of I know where they're at possibly because I've been there too. So sharing his work from a Western perspective and also medical wise, but also the Indigenous perspective of our culture, spirituality, healing practices and such. I was asked to start doing that. So I began to step into it, did further training as well and yeah, it changed my life.
Yeah. Do you have, if you don't mind sharing and you don't have to disclose a name or anything, but do you have a really story of maybe the ripple effect, maybe how you've touched someone's life, how you're continuing to integrate this work to impact others?
One that just popped into mind, and I was kind of surprised myself, and this was just shared with me publicly mid-December, I believe it was. I went to a community to do some workshops around grief and loss for a few days. And this lady from a few years back, I never disclose names or situations. I just sit with it. I carry it in my mind, in my memory. That yes, I know who they are. When they approach me, we work together on this or that. And she stood up in a full conference room and as she started to speak, I was kind of surprised and kind of taken aback, but just kind of smiled and nodded as she shared. And she said, "This woman here saved my marriage." And I was like, "What?" And she said, if it was not for her being open to work with me and then with my husband as well, I don't know what would have happened. But because she was open to me when I contacted her and started to work with me, and then I asked, "Can I get my husband to talk to you as well, me and him together?" I was open for that too. I was really reluctant, I remember, and I thought I haven't really done with two of them before. How's this going to go? But if I can help and be effective in some way, I was open to it. That was a few years back, and from what she shared, their relationship is apparently stronger than it ever had been. So that really stands out. But I think of my own family from who I was years ago, the way I saw my adult sons, their lives possibly going if change didn't take place in healing work. To me, that's my living legacy. Another part I got involved in all of this, I wanted my own healing, didn't know how to find it at one point. And as I found it and started to step into it, I wanted to break generational cycles and patterns and behaviors. I mentioned to you before that I've had visions even and I had one of my children, and this was about 12, 13 years ago, and I've only been sober for 10 now, but it scared me. What I saw was my four adult sons as grown men, as husbands and fathers, and alcoholics, full blown alcoholics, abusive, mean, not there, not present for their families, for their spouses. I saw their future children crying. I saw their future spouses hurting, heartbroken, and they didn't care and that scared me. I didn't want my sons to become what I had saw. And so to me, that was, I need to step forward because if I don't start doing the work, who else is going to do it? And I've had other situations too, other visions where I've seen things of why things played out as they did in life with my own family, generations before me, leading up to me. It actually scared my brother because he was there when I had that vision. One moment I'm fine, I'm quiet. Next thing you know, I'm in tears, I'm bawling, and I'm explaining to him what I just saw, what played out in my mind. And now that I know this, I have to do something about it. There is a reason I was shown this. And now I got to go forward. I have to take those steps because I have to undo that. I might only be able to undo that in our family, but it's going to start to create changes in good ways. And seeing my adult sons today and the men they have become, I'm proud of them. I'm so extremely proud of them. They're a typical young man. One is 19 and they range right up to 29 years old. They hardly ever touch a drink at all. but they do like to go out and have their little fun time with their friends. I don't judge. I don't judge anybody who drinks or engages in whatever form of entertainment and such that they like to, as long as you're being responsible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as you're doing it in ways that are not going to be harmful to yourself or others, and you understand the whole situation and what could be if you were doing it in wrong ways, I'm not going to judge you. But seeing the way my sons do that now, to me, that's I accomplished something. As long as they stay in that space going forward, none of them have kids yet. But if they stay in that space and they do things differently than how my own childhood and upbringing was done, and they do it in healthy ways, then I've accomplished my goal.
That's remarkable. Yeah, and so inspiring. Something that comes up for me too, and I've been deeply reflecting on it. It was interesting. It was an Instagram reel, and it was talking about how much of the modern generations will it's almost common to point the finger and say, "Oh, you've done this to me." And I think through our own journey, I think we have to reflect on our life and be like, okay, things could have been different. But the way I try to look at it as when I think about my generational trauma, it is ours. You know, we grow, we ascend, we overcome, you know, and
Yes.
I try to give it that grace because as much as unfortunately things happen that are difficult and, you know, too many opinions would say, "Oh, that shouldn't have happened." What can we do? We can't reverse the past. How do we grow past that and give it that forgiveness that we can overcome, anything?
Yeah.
I know it's easier said than done, but I relate to you in so many ways in regards to just knowing that it's something that you can't erase. All you can do is move forward.
Yes, and acceptance is huge. I had to come to a huge place of accepting my past and what was done to me and against me, how I had been hurt. And getting to a place of being able to forgive as well. Forgiving for me so that I don't have to carry that any further in life. I've already carried these things long enough. Like even with my own dad, I went and I knocked on his door one day. I probably completely shocked him. He looked shocked when he opened the door and was kind of like, "Yeah, is everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's okay. Can I come in? I want to talk to you." And he seemed reluctant. But that's when the things that I said to him was, well, he was absent for a majority of my life.
Mm.
I could probably write a book in situations with my dad. I had abandonment, rejection, and daddy issues too, majority of my life because he was not there. And I resented him. So
Mhm.
when I walked in that day, I told him, I just came because I've been thinking of you for the last couple of days. And something kept telling me, go see your dad, go see your dad. Part of me was saying, why in the world would I do that? Another part was, go see him, do this, get it done. We don't carry it anymore. So I finally went. Well, I shared with my son, and he didn't give me a choice. He was driving at the time. And I said, in the last few days, I've had this coming to me. I'm just thinking of my dad constantly. We're driving into town. He starts going towards my dad's place. And I said, what are you doing? You're going to go and do this. You're going to get it done now. So my son played a role in that. And sitting with my dad, I did say, I just came because I want to let you know that I forgive you for not being there for this and for that. He kind of looked stunned, but also his face lightened up. But I also said, I'm forgiving you though, because I don't want to carry it anymore. I've carried that heaviness all my life, probably since I was a baby or a toddler. I don't want it anymore. I want to live and enjoy life without that heaviness. And you're getting much older now. I don't want you to carry any of your regrets and your shame and such for not being there either. So I want you to know that I forgive you. But as you said, it's easier said than done for many people. I've had to at times explain the process of getting to a place of being able to let go. And to me, it was first acceptance and then letting go. And then eventually I came to a place of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not easy, especially depending on the severity of the situations and experiences we've had with others. Forgive at all. Some cannot let it go. They have their reasons. I
Yeah.
absolutely do not like when people say, oh, get over it. That was a long time ago. Or if my
Mhm.
cousin sees this, she's going to say, oh my God, I can't believe she said that. But I've shared with her, I do not like the saying, let go, let God. And I see it not, well, hear it from her, but not just her, many others too. That's
Yep.
just like saying, leave it right there. It's done. It's over with. It happened. It's gone.
Yeah.
There's work. There's so much healing work that has to come into play.
Yeah.
But with the resentments and the blame that I used to hold for my mother, what helped me there, and I think it started to come out while I was training with Gabor. So that first year of COVID, my mother had to be with me at my home. And she was with me for about 2, 3 months. So you can imagine a lot of triggers and such started to come up. Same time I'm training with Gabor online. She's hearing a lot of it and it's making her stop and think. And she started to share, she started to open up. And as I'm training and my mother sharing all of this, and she also triggered me being in my home and asked me what was wrong because I was avoiding her. And I was able to say, this is what's going on for me. This is why I'm avoiding you. I don't want to be around you because this and that. But I'm an adult and this is my home. I shouldn't feel that way. So that was the first instance where she opened up and said, you know why I was like that when you were a child? And me having the understanding of such things now that I do, things kind of clicked. And I could even look at myself. Like there was a time I had spanked my older children as discipline to show them right from wrong. It's been like 20 years now, but knowing why I did that back then, or knowing why I didn't parent or the way I should have, or I wasn't as present as I felt I should have been, wishing as a parent back then I did things differently, and understanding what had happened to me myself from a child right into my 30s, why I couldn't be fully present because I was in a space of highly alert all the time, always what's going to happen next? What do I have to protect myself and my children from? Not having that space to just be and to just enjoy life, to have a quiet mind, a quiet nervous system. And
Yeah.
understanding what my mother went through when she shared her stories, that shifted many things for her and I. I had
Mm.
also done the same thing with one of my sons because he had a lot of questions too. Why did you? Why didn't you? Why did you put up with? And
Yeah.
I learned 3, 4 years ago, he had a lot of resentments towards me from his childhood, regardless of whether I had quit drinking and done my healing work. And it was only when we had that talk, it took a few hours. I had my daughter in law there as well, just in case something blew up between us. But before that, my son used to say, my mom is so fake and she's so phony with the work I started doing. He would say, oh, yeah, that's what people see from her on the outside. You don't see what we see at home. But he gets it now. He was still stuck in a place of my past many years back, but
Mhm.
he wasn't connecting. And he also, as an adult, was not around much.
Yeah.
But then after we had that talk and he started to spend more time, he saw that really is my mom. That really is my mom's character now. This really is what my mom does. My
Wow.
son has also softened in huge ways. He used to be very guarded and closed off. Now he's just open. He's smiling. He's glowing. But I only noticed those changes start to take place after we had that huge connection where I was able to share, not in graphic detail. Of course, they still want to protect my child. And he may be hurt or want to protect still at his age based on what happened to me years ago, but to be able to share and open and say, this is who I was and why. This is what I
Mhm.
know now. And this is what life is now, for
Yeah.
lack of.
Absolutely. And it reminds me too when you had mentioned that, maybe just let it go or like put it on God. I always think of it's like we have a very spiritual side to us, but we're not sentient. We live in physical bodies. And so to honor that grief, I think is part of the healing process. But then as you have explained everything through that, it really comes down to that vulnerability that kind of brings it into the full picture and full circle.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. And then, even so, the ripple effect of what you had done within yourself, within your unit, and how it's carried over to your kids. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. At times I think, okay, I've learned enough wisdom and I've gained a lot of healing and such. I've shared in many spaces. Enough now. No more obstacles, please. No more.
I know.
What I ask for now, and I've been taught years ago, when you pray, smudge, and such, you never ask for strength because that's where all the obstacles and adversities are going to come into play. Creator is going to lay them all out there so that you gain that strength. Now, when I put any intentions out there, whether it's through smudging or otherwise, I ask for gentle lessons. If I still have growing to do, which we all do throughout lives, can it just be gentle now? Because I think I've learned enough for at least
Yeah.
50 lifetimes.
And we do have a threshold. I think that, yeah, we have a bandwidth and our capacity only goes so far. And I know I don't know what my soul has been trying to take me on, but I tell you, it's been hard lessons. And I agree. I just want some calm waters for as long as possible
Yeah.
because it's a lot, you know? And I think there's enough kind of coming in general that it just, some ease is needed.
Yes, yes, definitely. We all definitely need that for sure. We go through so much in life as it is, and we barely have times for ourselves for some downtime and self care. So, yeah, those are definitely things I treasure when I get the time, but reminding ourselves too that unless we ourselves are in a good space, what good are we to others?
I agree.
So, I have a workshop coming up in a week and a half, and I'm glad that, as I shared with you earlier, the last few days I just feel in a space of I don't even want to do anything. I just want to rest and relax and watch movies. But after all I've been through the last few months, and I can breathe, my nervous system can settle. I know that that is also leading me up to my workshop. It's helping me to be grounded, present, and come back to a good space so I can show up for my participants when they come to my workshops and groups. So if
Yeah.
I'm not in a good space or energy, somehow I'm going to put that on you and leave you with that too. And that's not what this work is about.
And I think we're kind of hitting this point, during COVID and through the tail end of COVID, where I think many people have been in this state of perpetual burnout and go, 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 almost
Yes,
not just by necessity, but almost by obligation. And I think now for myself, and even from the sounds of it with yourself, is like, it is okay to take a break. It is okay to fill your cup up. You need to in order
yes,
to pour into others.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. But I just want to thank you for joining me today. I hope we can have a follow up interview at a later time. But yeah.
Would be awesome. I'd definitely be up for that. I love connecting with you.
And thank you so much for sharing your story.
And thank you for having me.